We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? Give the call to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. And firstly, welcome back to Australia. The Coalition...
Order, members on my left.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Coalition thanks the full-time President of COP31 negotiations for taking the time today to make himself available and accountable to the Australian Parliament in his capacity as part-time Energy Minister. How many...
Order. The Leader of the Opposition will pause. The Leader of the House on a point of order.
Mr Speaker, standing orders are clear on references to members. Page 514 of practice makes it clear, and the reference that was just given is not referring to someone by their titles. Out of order.
The Minister, order. Members on my left. Yep, the Leader of the House. Order. The Manager of Opposition Business on the point of order.
On the point of order, the Leader did refer to the Minister by his title, correct title, and she is allowed to describe the Minister in any way she likes. And it wasn't part of his title. Yeah. And indeed he is the President as well, so President of COP is correct.
No, we're just going to...
Well, you made him the President of
Order,
COP.
Resume your seat. Thank you, Manager, for your assistance. I thank the Leader of the House. We're just going to deal with this. People need to be called by their correct titles to assist the House and less to move forward. If the Leader of the Opposition could move to her question and we don't have the commentary when we're asking questions, that would help everyone, and particularly addressing everyone by their correct titles. We don't need any other descriptors. Otherwise, we're going to get into dangerous territory. So let's just get on with the question and move forward and let that be a lesson to everyone. We're just going to ask questions to the Minister without descriptors. The Leader can continue with her question.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question...
No, just ask the question. We don't need the early...
The Prime Minister's interrupting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question in continuation, how many...
Order. Order. If everyone... The Prime Minister can cease interjecting. The member for Hume... Look, we haven't got through the first question, and I'm keen to hear the question, as I'm sure the Minister is. Let's just get to the question.
In continuation, thank you, Mr Speaker. How many days of Parliament will the part-time Minister miss in 2026, and what will be the cost to Australian taxpayers of the Minister's full-time presidential duties?
The Minister for Climate Change and Energy has the call.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I appreciate very much the question from the Leader of the Opposition. Now, Mr Speaker, when you are a patriotic party of government, you celebrate national successes whether you are in opposition or in government. That's the approach the Labor Party in opposition took when John Howard chaired APEC with our support. It's the approach the Labor Party took when Tony Abbott chaired the G20 with our support. It's the approach the Labor Party took to support the appointment of Matthias Cormann as Secretary-General of the OECD. I'm even old enough to remember, Mr Speaker, the Labor Party in government supporting the appointment of Malcolm Fraser as Secretary-General of the Commonwealth, Mr Speaker. I'm even old enough to remember that. Because if you are a serious party of government, you want your country to do well whether you're in opposition or in government. And I'm pleased that this government's achievements have been recognised with the appointment of COP negotiations president, Mr Speaker. I am pleased about that. And the fact that it tells you a lot about the modern Liberal Party, Mr Speaker. In a domestic debate, they say, well, look, we shouldn't take any action on climate change because we're just 1% of emissions. And when you say, well, maybe Australia can play an international role to help the rest of the world decarbonise, oh, that's a terrible thing too. We couldn't possibly have that. Now, this is a testament to Australia. It's a testament to my team. I want to thank the Assistant Minister, the member for Fremantle, who represented Australia at the first week of COP very well. I want to thank my Special Envoy, Kate Thwaites, the member for Jagga, who represented me at the G20, and they will both continue to represent me at other international meetings as well.
Order. The member for Lindsay. Has the minister concluded his answer? No. The Leader of the Opposition on her point of order. Can I just ask everyone to assist the House? I will have to take action if this kind of behaviour. You know what's so funny? If this behaviour continues, I think I want to be crystal clear to everyone. I'll have to take action. It's not sustainable for this kind of. If you'd stopped interjecting, I can give the call to your leader. You're not being rude to me. Order. The Leader of the Opposition is entitled to raise a point of order, but I would like her to do it respectfully and for everyone to listen to her point of order.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The point of order is on relevance, and I appreciate the minister's description of his various globetrotting duties. But the question was tight. How many days of parliament will the minister, the part-time minister, miss next year? And what will be the cost to Australian taxpayers of his full-time presidential duties?
Minister for Social Services. The member for Hume is really pushing the limits today. Trying to be reasonable with everyone, but you're making it exceptionally hard with your behaviour. I'll ask the minister to continue to be directly relevant to his question.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Leader of the Opposition asked me about ministerial travel and criticised me going to Brazil last week, and travelling back yesterday, Mr Speaker, pretty clearly. Apparently international trips aren't appropriate, Mr Speaker. Well, this is a recent development because on the 11th of July 2021, the Minister for the Environment announced that she would be travelling overseas as part of the Morrison government's campaign to stand up for Australia's interests and support the Great Barrier Reef communities and tourism operators ahead of the UNESCO World Heritage Committee meeting. The press release says Minister Lee will visit a number of countries. The press release does not tell us how many countries she visited. We had to read The Australian 2 weeks later to find out Australia's Minister for the Environment, Susan Lee, travelled to more than a dozen countries in recent weeks to secure support. That's what you call a cop-out, Mr Speaker.
Order. Order. When the House comes to order, members on my right, the Minister for Social Services getting close to leaving the chamber. The Manager of Opposition Business, we're just trying to... Well, don't be provoked. Sit in silence and everyone will be a lot stronger for it. Order. The House comes to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Sullivan.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Emergency Management. What is our Albanese Labor government doing to support our Northern Territory communities following the impacts of Tropical Cyclone Fina? And what or how is the government helping to prepare the rest of the nation for similar events during this upcoming high-risk weather season?
Order. Give the call. Order. Members on my left. The call to the Minister for Emergency Management, Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Solomon for the work that he's put into preparing his community against Tropical Cyclone Fina. Communities in the Northern Territory were well placed for Tropical Cyclone Fina, which tracked through the Van Diemen Gulf, past Darwin and the Tiwi Islands over the weekend as a Category 3 system. And I recognise the member for Solomon, the member for Lingiari and the Minister for Indigenous Australians in the other place for their work in providing timely updates and support for their communities. I also want to acknowledge the hard work of the Northern Territory Government, the Bureau of Meteorology, the Australian Defence Forces and our embedded officials from the National Emergency Management Agency who work so well together to keep local communities safe. I was able to visit the Northern Territory yesterday and I joined the Chief Minister to announce that the Albanese and Whanokiyaro governments have activated our disaster recovery funding arrangements in 7 local government areas. This will ensure immediate relief is provided to individuals and families who have been displaced during the event. It will also support temporary repairs to public infrastructure and long-term reconstruction of damaged roads, bridges and public infrastructure. While I was in Darwin, I had the opportunity to visit the Emergency Control Centre to personally thank those who worked so hard during the event to prepare local communities. Emergency service workers and power and water teams have done an outstanding job and continue to do so as recovery is underway. I also joined the member for Lingiari and the Minister for Indigenous Australians and the Chief Minister to assess the damage in Warramayunga on the Tiwi Islands. This was one of the areas hardest hit, with downed trees and power lines as a result of the cyclone, but the community there was in good spirits, and it was good to hear from them firsthand about their experience. The Albanese government and the NT government, local councils and the community will continue to work together as we enter the recovery phase. We're keeping a close watch on Tropical Cyclone Fina, which has been downgraded to a Category 1 as it passes across the Kimberley. Mr Speaker, I'm proud to be part of a government that is improving how we prepare for each high-risk weather season, and we take our responsibilities seriously. Our preparedness activities, including how we collaborate with state and territory governments to deliver, most importantly, our $1 billion Disaster Ready Fund to look at how we reduce disaster risk in communities. So far, more than $600 million has been committed to 446 projects, with Round 3 announced just last week. Round 3 runs a range of projects from cyclone shelters on Palm Island to an emergency coordination facility in Alice Springs. We're investing in our National Aerial Firefighting Fleet's multi-hazard capability, and we're continuing to expand the National Emergency Stockpile to ensure specialist equipment can be rapidly deployed, just like it was to the NT during Tropical Cyclone Fina. Building national preparedness in the face of increasing disasters and responding to events like Tropical Cyclone Fina is a priority of this Labor government and will continue to be.
Before I call the member for Warner, I'm pleased to inform the House that joining us today on the floor of the Parliament is the Honourable Bronwyn Bishop AO, the 29th Speaker of the House of Representatives. A very warm welcome to you, Mrs Bishop. Give the call to the honourable member for Wannon.
Thanks, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change. The Lowy Institute reports that as President of COP, Alok Sharma visited more than 50 countries, and media reports he travelled 200,000 miles, which is the equivalent of 8 trips around the Earth. As President of COP31 negotiations, how many countries will the minister be required to visit? How many miles will he need to travel? And how much taxpayer money will be spent in funding the full-time presidential duties of the part-time minister?
Order. I'm just going to remind members I'm not happy with descriptors of any sort. Just moving forward. Equally so, it will apply to anyone on this side of the chamber as well. So I'm not happy with that descriptor. So just want to make sure that, and it will go both ways if anyone is described in another way. So just stick to the name of the title, and I'll refer to members on page 514 of practice if anyone needs clarification. Give the call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. But firstly, I must correct a misperception that both the Leader of the Opposition and the Shadow Minister are perpetuating their questions. The role of COP President is not a full-time position. It is quite common for the role of President of the COP, and I'll be the President of the negotiations, to, well, they're different jobs, to be held by a Cabinet Minister concurrent with their duties. Last year's COP President was Mukhtar Babiev, who was the Minister for the Environment of Azerbaijan. The President of the first COP I went to was Minister Shukri, who continued in his role in the Egyptian cabinet while being President of the COP. So to suggest that this is a full-time job somehow is a complete and utter invention. It's a fantasy. You can say it as many times as you like. It doesn't make it true, Mr Speaker. Now,
Order. The Leader of the Nationals.
The Leader of the Opposition was asked this morning by Kieran Gilbert, isn't it good that Australians have a seat at the table and can chair some of the important international talks? And the Leader of the Opposition replied, no, it's not, Kieran. No, it's not. Well, OK, that's not good. But Kieran Gilbert is not the first time he's interviewed a member of the Coalition front bench about COP, because he interviewed the gentleman who asked me the question in 2021. And on that occasion, the now Shadow Minister said, as a previous diplomat who went to COP in Buenos Aires, I can tell you that Australia plays a leading role in seeking agreement and getting all countries to play their part in reducing emissions. And we'll continue to play that role So I've got no problems whatsoever engaging, said my shadow minister when he was defending COPs, Mr Speaker.
Members on my
and
right, the member
my
for
predecessor
McNamara.
as Minister for Energy also attended COPs, and the member for Hume gave a speech. Was the speech in Canberra or Sydney or Goulburn? No, it's in London. And he said, importantly, we recognise we cannot achieve all this alone, and that international collaboration.
Order. The member for Cooper is warned. When the House comes to order, I'll hear from the honourable member for Warner, who's entitled to raise his point of order.
Thanks, Speaker, and it goes to relevance. We don't need a history lesson. What we want to know is how much the taxpayer is going to pay from this president and part-time minister travelling the world.
The member for Wannon, I was explicit in not using descriptors, and you agreed with me when I said that. So you will leave the chamber under 94A. I don't know how clearer I can be. Don't do something because it is not in with the standing orders, and I referred to practice so everyone would know. So I'm not sure why you're surprised. Correct titles for everyone. No descriptors, no deviations. The minister was asked a specific question about details. He's not able to refer to the opposition for the remainder of his question because he wasn't asked about the opposition. So I'm going to ask him to be directly relevant to the question he was asked.
Well, Mr Speaker, the fact is that every trip I take will be in the national interest, representing our country, something I'm proud to do, something this government is proud of with our Foreign Affairs reset, which has replaced the mess we inherited under this Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister. It is unimaginable that those opposite would have been elected to such a position because you actually have to believe in climate change to be president of the climate change negotiation.
We'll hear from the honourable member for Boothby.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Social Services. How is the Albanese Labor government helping to tackle gender-based violence?
Give the call to the Minister for Social Services.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Boothby for her question. She'll be leading a very important inquiry with her Social Policy and Legal Affairs Committee shortly into the intersection between family, domestic and sexual violence and suicide, and I thank her and the committee for that work. Today is the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women, and I want to start by acknowledging every victim survivor, every frontline worker who has assisted them, and most sadly, those that we've lost in recent years and recent decades. Today, the Albanese Labor government announced a 40% funding boost for 1800 RESPECT. This is a really important investment in a service that began under a former Labor government during the Gillard years with 11,000 calls in 1 year. Last financial year, this service had 342,000 contacts. That is a 3,000% increase on the first year that we established 1800 RESPECT 15 years ago. This government, the Albanese government, has invested more than any previous government in addressing family, domestic and sexual violence, including through programs like making the leaving violence payment permanent, introducing legislation to make sure our social security system isn't weaponised against survivors of family and domestic violence, funding programs that intervene earlier with men, with adolescent boys, with children, particularly those men who want to change their behaviour. We've invested $1.2 billion in emergency and transitional housing to help make it safe for women and children fleeing violence. We've invested a record $3.9 billion in legal services, including $800 million extra for family violence legal services. We've legislated 10 days paid domestic violence leave, and we've made it illegal to sack someone because they're a victim of family or domestic violence. We've reformed the family law system to make the family law system safer, simpler and more accessible for victims of family and domestic violence. And very importantly, we're working with the states and territories to improve responses to victims of sexual violence. It's one of the areas of crime that continues to rise in a completely unacceptable way. Of course, these investments are beginning to make a difference. We have to acknowledge success when we see it. But do we think we've done enough? Not ever. Not while there is one victim of family, domestic or sexual violence will this government rest. We'll continue to work, and I know those opposite share our belief that every single one of us has a responsibility to act.
On indulgence, the Leader of the Opposition to associate.
And I briefly, on indulgence, associate the coalition with the remarks of the minister. Appreciate the ongoing funding into 1800 Respect, which is the first point of contact for anyone who feels unsafe, and to thank the House for their engagement with so many members talking about this issue from a personal perspective. And yesterday I spoke and read out the names of 74 women who've lost their lives since this time last year, and I made the point then that if 74 women had lost their lives in a single event, the whole country would pause and say, what on earth is going on? And we need to pause every single time this happens, because every single one of those lives is precious, the children are precious and the memories are precious, and we must keep fighting.
And for the benefit of members, this evening Parliament will be illuminated in orange to mark the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and the commencement of Global 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence campaign. And I invite all members to join myself, the President and members of Parliament at 8 p.m. on the forecourt. Call to the honourable member for Clark.
Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, I've recently had conversations with a significant number of government backbenchers who want a gambling advertising ban, as unanimously endorsed in the cross-party Murphy report. So, as I asked in my personal appeal to you a fortnight ago, will you allow government members a free vote on this issue so they can exercise their own judgment, represent their communities and to finally end this impasse?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Clark for his question and for his genuine engagement on these issues. Our Labor caucus makes decisions, which is why we have done more than any government since Federation to tackle problem gambling. We'll continue to work as a caucus and as a government to continue to work on these issues.
Give the call to the Prime Minister's concluded his answer. Give the call to the member for Leichhardt.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Education. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to help Australians with the student debt and to make our education system better and fairer? What has been the response?
Call to the Honourable the Minister for Education.
Well, thanks very much, Mr Speaker, and can I thank my great friend, the member for Leichhardt, for his question. I'm really glad that he asked me this question because I'm about 20% shorter than he is. And in a couple of days, student debt will be 20% smaller as well. I'm 5'9", he's 6'11". The Liberal Party are at 6s and 7s. Kids in the gallery know what I'm talking about. And in a couple of days' time, $16 billion of student debt is going to come off the shoulders of millions of young Australians. In just 2 days' time, 1.5 million Australians will have their student debt cut by 20%. And next week, another 1.5 million Australians will have their debt cut by 20% as well. It's the biggest cut to student debt in Australian history. We promised it and we're delivering it. But it's not the only thing that we're delivering. This year we signed agreements with every state and territory to fix the funding of our public schools, something that no Australian government has ever done before. And it's not a blank cheque. It's tied to reform, the sort of reform that we know works. The reading wars are over. We know what works to teach children to read. We also know that waiting until a child is 8 is too late to make sure we know whether they can read or write or to count. That's why early intervention is important. That's why we're rolling out phonics checks and numeracy checks in Year 1 to identify children who are falling behind, as well as more small group tutoring to provide support for children to catch up. And next year something else will happen. Mr Speaker, next year we'll start the work of reforming the national curriculum, starting with maths, starting with the first 3 years of maths. Make sure that we get the basics right. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, something the Liberal Party can help us out with, division. and
Order.
You got that?
Order. Members on my right.
Next year, something else as well.
The member for Gippsland.
Education ministers have agreed to a reform that's been talked about for a long time but never happened. That's bringing together the bodies that are responsible for national testing, the national curriculum, for national standards, as well as national research under one roof to create an Australian Teaching and Learning Commission. That's what delivery looks like. And that is what division looks like. No joy, just division. The Australian people know it, and they also know this. We're cutting student debt by 20%.
Before I call the member for Longman, I'm also pleased to inform the House that present in the gallery today is Ms Jodie Hans, the member for Collie Preston in the Parliament of Western Australia, and also a delegation of women leaders from the Australian Greek community. Accompanied by the delegation is His Excellency Stavros Venizelos, the Ambassador of Greece to Australia. Welcome to you all. The call to the member for Longman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Taipan Hydraulic Hose Systems is a proud family business in my electorate of Longman, which has been in business for over 30 years. The power bill that owner Alan paid this month has surged by 47.5% compared to what he paid for the same period in November 2022. Minister, when will power prices come down?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for his question. It's a very important one on a real issue of energy prices in this country, which is why I and this government have focused like a laser on energy prices and will continue to, Mr Speaker. Why we've delivered 3 rounds of energy bill relief opposed by those opposite.
Member for Dawson.
Why we're continuing to help Australian households and businesses reduce their bills in many instances to nothing with our cheaper home batteries policy. And I'm pleased it's been a while, Mr Speaker. It's been a while. I'm pleased to inform the House that 136,999 Australian households and small businesses have installed a cheaper home battery with 2.9 gigawatt hours worth of storage. All this is practical action to help reduce bills. And the good news is, Mr Speaker, what reduces bills and improves reliability and reduces emissions are all the same thing. That's more renewables backed by gas and storage, Mr Speaker. That's why we are... Now, I'm happy to have a debate about energy prices. I welcome it, because this side of the House has a plan to help energy prices. Those opposite announced a plan during the break to push prices up, because we know that abandoning net zero will push prices up. That's what the Treasury tells us. That's what the International Energy Agency tells us. That's what every expert tells us. Those of us who want to sweat the coal assets for longer, they are the most unreliable part of our energy system and the most expensive. So bring on a debate about energy prices. 136,000 batteries, that's how it's going. That's how it's going. They're going great. They're going great, and they'll continue to go strongly, because Australian households and Australian businesses know that what's good for your pocket is good for the planet. And it's true of households, it's true of businesses, it's true of countries, it's true of the planet, and that's the approach of this government. The Leader of the Opposition denies it. She denies that renewable energy is the cheapest form of energy. Well, they can deny it. We'll continue to implement it, and we very much welcome this debate.
Okay. I think we know what's happening soon. The Leader of the Nationals has had a really good go, and he's agreeing with me now. So that also is consenting that he will now remain silent for the remainder of question time. Well, he can give it a go and see how he goes. When the House comes to order, we'll hear from the honourable member for Griffith.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is for the Treasurer. How is the Albanese Labor government helping to ease pressure on Australians and modernise our economy? How does it compare to other approaches?
Call to the Treasurer.
Speaker, the member for Griffith is an outstanding advocate for those wonderful suburbs to the south of Brisbane, delivering every single day since she's been elected for the people who sent her here. And that's what this government is all about, delivering help with the cost of living in the most responsible way that we can, delivering 2 more tax cuts, 3 in total, delivering cheaper medicines and more bulk billing, delivering student debt relief from this week, delivering smaller deposits and building more homes, delivering a 12% super guarantee and boosting the low-income offset, delivering more paid parental leave and paying super on paid parental leave, delivering fee-free TAFE, delivering cheaper home batteries and help with electricity bills at the same time as we delivered 2 surpluses in our first year and a much smaller deficit in our third year in office. Now, Mr Speaker, it is a fact from their own documents they released at election time this year that if those opposite had won the election, there would be less help for people doing it tough. There would be no tax cuts, there would be bigger deficits and there would be more debt. And that's why nobody takes them seriously on the economy, Mr Speaker. Now, even with all of the progress that Australians have made together on our economy in recent years, whether it's halving inflation, creating 1.2 million jobs or getting wages moving again or seeing interest rates cut 3 times this year already, we do know, we do acknowledge, we do understand that many Australians are still under pressure, and we will get a sense of that in tomorrow's inflation numbers. Now, economists expect that the unwinding of some state energy rebates will push the headline number up a bit tomorrow, and that's why they have encouraged us to focus largely on the underlying number. But whatever those numbers tell us tomorrow, inflation will be much lower under us than it was under them when they left office. When they were throwing more and more fuel on the fire, when inflation was absolutely skyrocketing on their watch, Mr Speaker. Now, it's bad enough that they left us with $1 trillion in debt and skyrocketing inflation and falling real wages. It's bad enough that they opposed cost of living help and they voted against tax cuts for the working people of this country. Now they want to push power prices up, not down. They want to smash investor confidence and weaken our economy with a position on net zero, which is all about their internal politics and not about the national economic interest, Mr Speaker. What has become abundantly clear as we finish the year is that the opposition finishes the year focused just on themselves, recklessly divisive and hopelessly divided. This government finishes the year united, focused on the cost of living and working very hard to deliver every day for the people who sent us here.
The House comes to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Fisher.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Bocker Bites is a fish and chip shop in my electorate of Fisher. Since June this year, Bocker Bites has seen its power bill surge by 23% since June. The owner, Beck, has told me it's simply, quote, untenable to run a business under these conditions. Minister, when will power prices come down?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Again, I thank the honourable member for his question. And power prices are a very important issue and a real issue of substance. And that's why I and this government have been focused on them and will continue to be every day. And that's why we'll continue. That's why we'll continue with modernising our energy system and dealing with 10 years of denial and delay and neglect. We saw 4 gigawatts of dispatchable power leave the grid and 1 gigawatt come on. That's a 3 gigawatt gap, and that supply gap has led to increased prices. When you have more supply leave than what comes on, that actually puts upward pressure on prices. Now, we have seen 5 gigawatts of solar, wind, gas and batteries come on in the last year, which is a record since the national energy market was created. That is because of our policies. That is because of our policies to encourage more energy, especially more renewable energy, backed by gas peaking and backed by storage.
Order.
Now, what I would say to that small business and the many other fine small businesses around Australia is that we know there is so much more to do, and we will keep going with what needs to be done. We won't stop, and we won't stop the drive to the most affordable, the cheapest, the most reliable and the lowest emissions form of energy.
Member for Goldstein.
We know that there are different ways. We know that household power bills could rise by $449 a year if we had greater reliance on gas and coal and for renewables were built more slowly. As the Clean Energy Council has pointed out, or we know, as the Treasury has said, not pursuing, and I quote, not pursuing net zero by 2050 risks lower economic growth, reduced investment, mixed export and employment opportunities and higher energy prices. And we know, or as the Grattan Institute's Energy Director Tony Wood has said, and I quote, there is very little that I could see in the Liberal Party's plan which would actually bring down power prices. And we know that, Mr Speaker, because their plan is cobbled together to save the leadership of the Leader of the Opposition in a vain attempt. It's not about Australian businesses, it's all about Liberal Party internal politics. We'll remain focused on small businesses, medium-sized businesses and households and giving them access to cheaper, more reliable, lower emissions energy.
Now the House has come to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Richmond.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering a better deal for gig workers, and how does this compare to other approaches?
Call to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and I'd like to thank the member for Richmond for her question. She is a champion for working people and part of this government that is delivering for Australians. Now, the Albanese Labor government is delivering a better deal for gig workers by introducing reforms to ensure minimum standards for workers engaged on digital platforms while reserving the flexibility they want. Now, for too long, these workers fell through the cracks of our workplace relations system, with many relying on tips to survive. Now, our Labor government does not believe that this is the Australian way, which is why we introduced important changes to protect these workers. And today we are seeing these reforms in action. Our laws have brought together the Transport Workers Union, Uber and DoorDash to the table to reach a groundbreaking agreement which will now be passed by the Fair Work Commission after consideration. This agreement, delivered by our reforms, if approved by the Fair Work Commission, will mean that for the first time platform food delivery drivers will have a minimum floor that protects their pay and represents life-changing increases to their income. Workers will also benefit from better conditions, have stronger rights to representation, dispute resolution and protection if injuries or accidents occur. And the companies will also benefit from a stable workforce and a level playing field on pay and conditions. This is what cooperative and productive workplace relations looks like. Now, this morning I met with Nabeen, a delivery driver here in Canberra, who told me that if approved, this agreement means when you're ordering food, the driver who brings food to your door will be getting paid decently, getting paid what he or she deserves. Now, I'm asked if there's any alternative approaches. Well, the alternative approach was that of the Coalition. While they were in government, they ignored the calls from these essential workers for a better, fairer industry. And of course, when they had the chance to support our important protections, the Liberal and National Party voted against them, arguing that a lack of minimum standards was a good model and working well. The question for the Leader of the Opposition is whether rolling back these important protections for some of our lowest paid workers is still part of their agenda to save her leadership. Now, we know just a few weeks back, when asked about rolling back Labor's important workplace reforms, her answer was, we'll look at it all. Well, our government is looking after workers while they remain divided.
Give the call to the honourable member for Capricornia.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Manufacturer SMW Group in my electorate of Capricornia has seen its power bill skyrocket by 70% in just 4 years. As a result, the owner has told me he's held off hiring over 100 new staff. So, Minister, when will the power prices come down?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for her question. And again, it's a very fair question on behalf of an Australian business. And Australian businesses deserve a government focused on reducing energy costs and modernising the energy grid, and that's exactly what we've been doing. And that's exactly what they failed to do with 22 failed energy policies over 10 years. Because even the Leader of the Opposition just a few minutes ago denied that renewables are the cheapest form of energy. They just don't get it. I suspect the Leader of the Opposition really does know it, but has to appease the climate-denying far right of her party for her hold on her job. But we know just today, a report out today from AEFA, which says renewables are the lowest cost technology for new-build electricity generation. Renewables are now the most cost-competitive option globally for new electricity generation, with costs about 40 to 50% lower than the nearest fossil fuel option. So we've got the Leader of the Opposition dropping net zero, proposing maybe new coal, not new coal, we're not sure. The Liberal Party party room couldn't even work it out. We know that it was not in their press release, it was in their glossy document that they'd support new coal-fired power, which after the Collinsville debacle, where they announced a new coal-fired power station in North Queensland, which was never built, that's an understandable reticence by those opposite. We, on the other hand, have a clear plan to help Australian businesses and Australian families with lower energy prices. We've seen energy prices fall by a third on wholesale terms in the last quarter. We think that's a good thing. They think that's a bad thing.
Give the call to the member for Maribyrnong.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Housing, Homelessness and Cities. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering more homes for more Australians, and are there any risks to the government's work?
Call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Thank you, Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Maribyrnong for her question. She is one of our gun housing advocates, and her advocacy is really paying off, Speaker. Our government is building a whopping 929 homes in her electorate alone, Speaker. Now, I've talked to the parliament before about the fact that those opposite built 373 homes across the country in their 9 years in office. We are building 2.5 times as many homes in her electorate alone, and we are just getting started, Speaker. Now, Speaker, we have got a housing crisis affecting our country that's been a generation in the making, and the answer is we've got to build, 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 and that is exactly what our government is doing through the Housing Australia Future Fund. Speaker, across our agenda, we've got 5,000 social and affordable homes around the country complete. We've got 25,000 homes that are in construction or planning. And I was really proud to announce on Sunday the next round of the Housing Australia Future Fund, which will fund another 21,000 social and affordable homes. Now, Speaker, we are a government that delivers for Australians, and we do what we said we'd do. Speaker, we committed to Australians that we would build 55,000 social and affordable homes over 5 years, and the announcement on the weekend clears the pathway for doing that. Now, Speaker, I was incredibly lucky on a day last week to visit the member for Maribyrnong's electorate, where we met some of the new Housing Australia Future Fund tenants that have moved into her community. And, Speaker, this is without question the best part of my job as the Minister for Housing for Australia. I met Tianjin and Christine and 1-month-old baby Jacob, who have recently moved into a new home in the member's electorate. Now, Mr Speaker, this beautiful young family had been living in a share house with 8 families in one home, Speaker. They had been on the social housing waiting list for 7 years, and they had a 1-month-old baby.
And, Speaker, I can tell you to see their pride and their happiness and the relief that they felt to be able to provide stable housing for their tiny little baby, I challenge any person here to meet that family and tell me that the Housing Australia Future Fund is not one of the most important things that our government is doing right now to build Australia's future. Speaker, that one home has changed the life of an entire Australian family, and we're doing it 55,000 times around the country. Now, Speaker, I'm asked about risks, and I think they're making it clear, aren't they, by the yapping that's going on opposite me, because they don't believe in any of the important things that our government is doing about housing. Speaker, they built 373 homes in almost a decade, and they openly say that they don't want the Commonwealth building homes for Australians. Speaker, we take a different view. We're backing in key workers, we're backing in Australian families, and we're fighting for young people to get the housing opportunities that they deserve in our great country.
Before I call the honourable member for Bradfield, I'm also advised that the Honourable Sam O'Connor, the Queensland Minister for Housing, Public Works and the Minister for Youth, is in the gallery as the guest of the member for Macpherson. Give a call to the honourable member for Bradfield.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is for the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. The Safeguard Mechanism, the government's primary lever for achieving greenhouse gas emission reductions, is set to be reviewed in 2026-2027. In August this year, the Productivity Commission recommended reducing the threshold for facilities covered by the mechanism to those emitting 25,000 tonnes of pollution a year, down from the current 100,000 tonnes. When will the government start the review of the Safeguard Mechanism, and will it accept the Productivity Commission's recommendation to lower the Safeguard Mechanism pollution threshold?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for her question and her interest. I will say, with the greatest of respect and seriously, the honourable member answered the question in many respects, because it was indicated in the explanatory memorandum to the rule, which accompanied the safeguard reforms, the safeguard legislation, that we would review the safeguard legislation in 2026-2027, which we are not yet there. So that review will begin next year. I am pleased with the way the safeguard mechanism reforms are working thus far. The first year of data shows a reduction in on-site emissions from the covered facilities equivalent to 1/3 of Australia's domestic aviation. That is no small thing. That's a good reduction in emissions from the covered facilities. It shows the policy working well, and the Leader of the Opposition's interjecting she might like to back up that claim with any particular facts rather than just well, any facts? Any facts? No. It's a good policy. Now, we will review it very meaningfully. The honourable member correctly refers to Productivity Commission advice, but that was a report to government, not of government. It will be considered along with a whole range of other submissions, no doubt, when we begin that review next year. The honourable member will be very welcome, in all seriousness, to put in a submission to that review, and we will take it and all other submissions very seriously.
Give the call to the member for Hasluck.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Skills and Training. How is the Albanese Labor government supporting TAFE students across Australia with the cost of living as they train for the jobs that we need?
Call to the Minister for Skills and Training.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank my friend, the member for Hasluck, for her question. It was fantastic to be with her in her electorate last week to open the brand new clean energy training facilities at Midland TAFE, something she fought for and won. It was also great to hear from local students about how much they value the opportunities that free TAFE is providing them. And, Speaker, the Albanese government has put TAFE back at the heart of skills and training because it belongs there and always should have belonged there. We're backing in the hard work of TAFE students like those that the member for Hasluck and I met last week. They're amazing teachers too, by upgrading TAFE facilities through our government's TAFE Technology Fund, including $3.24 million at Midland. Great West Australian students like Timothy, like Brock and Kudawashi, who are all benefiting from our investment. And it's not only facilities the member may be interested in hearing that we're rolling out for TAFE students. Our government is also rolling out cost of living relief to ensure that Australians can get the skills they want for the jobs that we need. Australian apprentices and vet students are among those around the country are hearing from the ATO about the Albanese government's 20% cut to student debt that's being applied to their accounts right now. thousands of dollars that many of these students are saving on student debt. Now, this is a pretty special bit of news to those of us on this side of the House and those millions of Australians anyway, news that we're proud to deliver because we know it makes a big difference in the lives of Australians. But of course that's not all, Speaker. Free TAFE is reaching new heights. There are now more than 725,000 free TAFE enrolments, 725,000, and more than 210,000 course completions. The Minister for Housing will be pleased to know that construction courses are now the third most popular type of free TAFE courses. More than 59,000 enrolments, people going on to build the houses Australians need, including CIT students the Prime Minister and I met with today, Yao, Ruby and Josh. People like them, together with more nurses to care for Australians, more early childhood educators too. And this is why our government made free TAFE permanent. But the Leader of the Opposition and members opposite don't like free TAFE. But we know the Leader of the Opposition and her coalition will talk it down at every opportunity, ignoring the stories.
Order. The Minister will pause. Order. Members on my left, I want to hear from the Manager of Opposition Business on a point of order.
On relevance, the member for Hasluck asked one of the tightest questions I might have seen in my time here, very tightly framed and directly to the government's achievements, and I'd ask the Minister to answer the question, not refer to the opposition.
I agree with the manager. He wasn't asked about anything about the opposition, so return back to the question and refrain from the comments you were making.
Thank you, Speaker. I've been talking about the 725,000 enrolments in free TAFE.
Order.
210,000 course completions. These are thousands of Australians that, if it wasn't for free TAFE, they wouldn't have been able to take up their opportunity. While the Liberals are concerned by distraction and division, we are getting on with the job and delivering for Australians.
The Minister,
rebuilding TAFE, debt relief and free TAFE.
The Minister will resume his seat. The call to the member for Dawson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. Peter Doyle, a cane farmer in Dawson, fears he will lose money by harvesting his crop because his average power costs have doubled. Despite installing solar, Peter is still going backwards. Minister, when will the power prices come down?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for his question. And again, unlike the first few questions, these are questions that are based on serious matters that are worthy of debate in this House, because there is a real debate about the various approaches, alternative approaches to energy prices in this country. This government's approach to help Australian households with things like the cheaper home batteries policy and with the solar sharer policy for 3 hours of free power in the middle of the day, which we introduced and they opposed, Mr Speaker, which has been very broadly welcomed by Australian energy consumers who know that renewable energy is the cheapest form of energy and we want to see more Australians benefit from it. To continue with the task of rolling out more renewable energy in this country, and I'm pleased that September was the first month in Australian history that we got more electricity from renewable energy than coal, and October was the first month in Australian history where renewable energy supplied 50% in our main energy grid. This is progress. It takes time to build up. It takes time to build up. It's taken time to build to 50% and it will take time to build to 82%, but we'll keep going.
Order. I was listening to the Minister and he was answering the question about the time frame, but the member for Dawson can't simply get up and say relevance because he was being directly about. If you listen carefully, he was answering about the time frame. So, what's your point of order?
It is on relevance, and I'm listening to exactly what you said, sir, but I want to know when. Peter wants to know when will it come down. He's doing it tough, sir.
The member for Dawson, we've been dealing with this for a little while now. If the Minister is talking about the time frame, and he did give an exact sentence to the question you were asking about it taking time, I know you want an exact date, but under the standing orders I can't deliver that. So, order. I'm just going to make sure that the Minister is being directly relevant, but no more points of order the rest of the week if you don't like the answer, okay? The Minister will be directly relevant to the question he was asked.
Certainly, Mr Speaker, and I do think it's relevant to point out that policies like ours have seen wholesale prices come down 30% in the last quarter. Now, we know well, it's a fact. It's a fact. But we know there's more work to do to make sure this flows through to retail consumers, and we'll see in the next default market offer, Mr Speaker, which will be out in March next year. We won't be hiding it, whatever it says. It'll be released, just like the last three have. It hasn't always been the case, Mr Speaker, but whilst ever I'm the Minister, they'll be released on time, transparently, for Australians to see. That's why we've reformed the default market offer to give Australian consumers a better deal, including solar sharer, including the 136,999 households who have now installed a cheaper home battery. These are all practical policies which will continue to deliver.
Call to the honourable member for Bullwinkle.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government strengthening Medicare and making it easier for Western Australians to access urgent care when they need it? How does providing more urgent care clinics help strengthen Medicare after a decade of cuts and neglect?
Call to the Minister for Health and Ageing, the Minister for Disability and the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker. Only 10 nurses have ever served in this parliament, Mr Speaker, and 3 of them are in the chamber right now, including the terrific member for Bullwinkle. As a government committed to strengthening Medicare, we are so lucky on this side to have nurses, doctors, psychologists, a pharmacist, all helping us to guide that important agenda. And last week, the member for Bullwinkle and I visited the Mount Helena Medical Practice, one of the GP clinics in her electorate that have already registered to become a Medicare bulk billing practice, bulk billing all of their patients all of the time. And shortly, Mr Speaker, we'll announce the location of the Mundaring urgent care clinic that the member for Bullwinkle promised at the last election. That's one of 47 clinics that we'll announce over the coming couple of weeks, which will open over the coming couple of months. And it will take the network to 137 urgent care clinics, all open 7 days a week, extended hours, and importantly, Mr Speaker, fully bulk billed. So all you need to take along is your Medicare card, Mr Speaker. And once the network is fully up and running, it will see 2 million patients every single year, most of whom would otherwise have had to go to their local emergency department. Now, it's not just Bullwinkle, Mr Speaker, that's benefiting from our strengthening Medicare agenda. That plan is working right across the great state of Western Australia, Mr Speaker. Take a seat like Forrest, for example, Mr Speaker. Already 10 GP clinics in the electorate of Forrest have signed up as Medicare bulk billing practices, bulk billing all of their patients all of the time. Already the Bunbury Urgent Care Clinic has seen more than 35,000 people fully bulk billed, taking pressure off the busy emergency department at the Bunbury Hospital, Mr Speaker. Indeed, the Bunbury Urgent Care Clinic has been so successful that at the last election we committed additional funds to help them boost staffing at busy times of the day, Mr Speaker. We also promised a Medicare mental health centre for Bunbury, Mr Speaker, and will deliver on that too. Now, I don't recall the opposition supporting either of those commitments, Mr Speaker, but we know that our strengthening Medicare agenda is working for the people of Forrest, Mr Speaker, which is why we were all so delighted to be in the electorate of Forrest last week, Mr Speaker. We were delighted to be in Bunbury. We noticed the member's van following us around, keen to hear the story of us strengthening Medicare for the people of Western Australia. The Prime Minister didn't just go to Bunbury, he went to Busselton as well, met with the Busselton Chamber of Commerce, Mr Speaker, and I can assure the member there will be many, many more visits back to the electorate of Forrest, Mr Speaker, because we've got a great story to tell.
Order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Curtin.
My question's for the Prime Minister. Australians are asking why the government has failed to respond to the Murphy Review's unanimous recommendation to ban gambling ads. No one in this chamber is seeking to ban gambling, despite what you've said. And when asked about reform, you list actions that were announced before the Murphy Review. Many members of your own party support an ad ban. Why won't you allow a free vote on a ban on ads for online gambling?
Give the call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for her question to me as Prime Minister, but I'm also leader of the Australian Labor Party. And we are a political party, not a bunch of individuals. And what we do is we make decisions.
Order.
We make decisions in our caucus.
Members
in
on
our
my
caucus that
members
make
on my
a
left
difference.
will cease interjecting.
And when we make
the
decisions
member for Barker
in our caucus,
will cease
what that
interjecting.
does is result in action.
Order.
Now,
the Prime
those
Minister will
opposite-
pause. Prime Minister will pause. The member for Cowper yelling like that is highly disorderly. The member for Curtin was heard in silence. I'm just going to ask everyone, take the temperature down. I can't hear a word that's being said. The Prime Minister deserves the respect of being heard in silence, as the questioner was as well, who want her answer as well. The Prime Minister has the call.
People do have a choice, Mr Speaker, about what political path they will take and how they'll participate in politics. People can participate as independents and wait for decisions to be made by government and then decide whether they'll support them or oppose them or try to amend them. And I respect that. And I respect the member for Curtin and the way that she takes policy development seriously in this chamber. And she has put forward a range of amendments to government legislation that have been supported by the government in the last term and this. And I encourage her to continue to do so. But we treat every member of the parliament with respect. That hasn't always been the case. That hasn't been always been the case for governments. But we do that.
Member for Fisher.
We do that. We have introduced more legislation to tackle problem gambling than any government since Federation. And one of the things that we continue to do is to work with organisations, including media organisations, including sporting organisations as well, on ways in which we can move forward to further tackle the problem gambling issue. We will have further measures, but we won't do it by pretending that you can just wave a wand and fix things immediately with one piece of legislation. We'll continue to do it piece by piece to make a difference, and that's precisely what we are doing.
Call to the honourable member for Petrie.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering on its commitments to improve the lives of Australians?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Petrie for her question. And today at Parliament House, I hosted with the Deputy Prime Minister a fantastic group of Australians. And there are times in this job where you really lift it up by hearing the stories of Australians and the difference that government decisions can make to their lives, to the way that they deal with day-to-day issues. And each one of the people who we met today is benefiting from our government's delivery. We met Beck and Anthony. They both work at the Woolies at Dixon, and they are now earning hundreds of dollars a week extra because of their penalty rates, which is now legislated and protected. We met Ruby and Yao, both studying construction, using free TAFE to get the skills they need for a job for themselves, but also to enable them to build homes for Australians and to engage in that sector. We met Kieran, who's studying law at Canberra Uni. He's saving around $9,400 with the 20% cut in his student debt. We met Emily,
Order, members on my left.
paid prac. She's undertaking paid prac for an 8-week nursing placement. Now, I reckon most Australians would know that we need more people to do nursing. They would also, I think, be surprised to think that people like Emily before this change would have had to have lost income in order to do a paid prac placement that is a compulsory part of becoming a nurse. We met Jess. Jess is saving $700 a year on her endo treatment, making an enormous difference to her. We met Juliana and Dristy. They're childcare workers. They have got a 15% wage increase as a direct result of this government's policy, meaning that they spoke about the retention levels staying there in childcare, just as we met aged care workers as well, retaining workforce there. And we met Anne, who's a teacher whose school in South Australia is on track to receive full and fair funding under our government. Something we didn't promise prior to our election, but we delivered in our first term, finally delivering those agreements. The teachers, nurses, students, workers and people who want stronger Medicare. This is delivery in action,
The member for
Mr.
Batten
Speaker.
will leave the chamber under 94A. Continually interjecting when you're on a warning, no matter how long it takes, you'll be removed. Prime Minister in continuation.
It is delivery in action, Mr. Speaker, making a positive difference to people's lives, which is probably why it provokes interjections from those opposite who don't want people to be lifted up, only themselves. And I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.